Hunting. It's the process of tracking down one's prey and taking its life. Some do it for food and others do it for sport. And while you can consider any serial killer to be a hunter, one specifically did it just as it sounds. Today we discuss the butcher baker, Robert Hansen. Let's open the serial killer file. Born in Pocahontas, Idaho in 1940, Robert Hansen experienced a difficult home life. An overbearing father cast a dark shadow down upon his son. For Robert, attending school as a young boy got him away from his father, sure, but it was more like out of the frying pan and into the fire. Robert suffered from a severe stuttering problem and was inflicted with horrible acne. He later in life described his face as one giant pimple. These qualities made Robert a very shy, closed-off individual who would often fall prey to bullies. This continued throughout high school. He would watch as other boys his age would go on dates, while he was left alone, unwanted by any of them. And eventually things did change for Robert. He enlisted in the military, where he remained for 1 year before being discharged. It was after this that he found love and got married in 1960, but unsurprisingly, it didn't last. Robert Hansen still felt jaded from his school experience, so he took control the only way he could, by sneaking into his old school's bus garage and igniting it. He watched as the entire structure engulfed in flames. He set himself on a path from that point forward, but it's doubtful he knew how far the path would go. As he watched the garage burn, he unknowingly passed a milestone many serial killers do in their early days. He committed arson. For perhaps the first time in his life, he was in control. The emergency response to the scene was because he willed it, and that can make a person feel very powerful. He paid for his crime by spending nearly 2 years in prison. His wife filed for divorce while he was there. For the next few years, Robert was in and out of jail for petty theft charges, but upon release, he was ready for a new beginning. He managed to get married again in 1963, and by 1967, moved out to Anchorage, Alaska to renew his life and follow in the footsteps of his father. He became a baker. Despite his father often forcing him to work long, hard hours at the family bakery, Robert knew where his talents were best utilized. But baking aside, Robert also felt great comfort in hunting. He was an avid hunter and became well known in the area as a seasoned outdoorsman. He'd often take off in a plane he had purchased and go off hunting, going as far as to even set several local hunting records. Robert's low self-esteem and constant hammering thoughts of inadequacy continued to morph him and evolve his criminal mind. Robert was interested solely in righting what he considered to be injustices in his life. Women never wanted him the way he wanted, but prostitutes rarely said no to money. He'd find prostitutes, nude dancers, and the like, and whisk them away on his private plane. He seemed nice, trustworthy, and wealthy. But these women would learn that they had made a tremendous mistake. Robert would bring these women to isolated areas of the Alaskan wilderness and demand sex. If the women gave him what he wanted without any hassle, he'd often bring them back to town and allow them to go, warning them that if they were to talk, he'd have them arrested. He claimed to have connections with the police, but the only connections he had were that of a criminal. The women who demanded payment or refused his advances would often meet a different end, one profoundly more unfortunate. Over the course of about a decade, from the 1970s into the 1980s, Robert brought women out to remote locations to brutally rape and murder them. By this time, Robert was a family man. He had kept his wife and even had 2 children with her. All of them, quite obviously, had no idea what he was up to exactly. He sent his family away on an extravagant European vacation to get them away for a little while he placed ads in the local singles section of the newspaper. One of Robert's favorite tactics was to strip his victims naked and let them run off into the wilderness. He'd give them a head start to escape. Once they were out of sight, his hunting mindset flipped on. He would take up his favorite knife and his rifle and stalk his prey, hunting them down and killing them each and every time. They were never any match for his skill. His offer for an escape was only a way to prolong their inevitable death. Eventually, though, Robert slipped up. Aside from a number of bodies being stumbled upon over the years with an unknown killer running free, one of Robert's victims managed to escape. He handcuffed her and brought her to his airplane hangar. While his back was turned, she made her escape and made her way to police. Robert was investigated and caught with souvenirs from the victims, along with newspaper clippings and an array of weaponry. Robert came to confess to his crimes and pointed out locations where the undiscovered victims were buried. He confessed to 17 murders, but it is believed he could have been responsible for more. However, he was only convicted for the murders of 4 women. But it didn't matter much. He was sentenced to life imprisonment plus 461 years. Robert Hansen died of an undisclosed illness in August of this year at the age of 75. Keep in mind that a person doesn't need a gun or a license to be hunting game, and that game just might be you. That's all in this file. Be sure to click the subscribe button so you don't miss the next episode of Seriously Strange. Also, if you have a suggestion for a future episode, please follow me on Twitter and tweet it to me at @TheRobDyke. And I'll see you next Wednesday. Case closed.